Hi, everybody. This is our next module in our Farmer's Edge training manual, entrepreneurship, sales, and marketing. In module one, in our training manual, we covered quite an extensive overview of the marketing mix and the four P's, etc. Again, a big part of entrepreneurship is how do you build your brand? How do you establish yourself? How do you position yourself? Today, we're going to start looking at module two of the manual, and module two you will find on page 22 of your manual. And what we're really looking at in lesson one already is looking at how do you design a marketing budget. Now, when you're a new company or a fairly small company or you're just starting up, finding budgets for marketing is quite a difficult task. But it's definitely something we have to consider as a portion of our revenue. So a lot of times in our farming enterprises that we manage, where we play a mentorship role, we advise, for example, the simplest saving as part of a marketing budget. Where we would say if you sell something for 100 Rand and your input was 50 Rand, you have to pay yourself a salary of 10 Rand per chicken, and then you have to have a marketing budget of 10 Rand per chicken, and then you also have to have a risk, a budget that you make available. So it's quite important. The better you create your marketing budget, and the sooner you can position yourself with marketing of your product, the sooner you will find success, of course. So when we look at lesson one on page 22, we look at the introduction. Now, specifically in South Africa and the majority of African countries, I think all of them, street vendors play a pivotal role in creating food security, in job creation, etc. Now, in South Africa, for example, 80% of food security is created by street vendors. You know, this is where you sell a live chicken, where you farm your produce, you sell it live, farm gate sales, where you sell it to your neighbor, extended neighbor and community. Now, this is such a pivotal role, very difficult to formalize, but such a pivotal area of creating food security and jobs. And this is what we're looking at, as well as how can we integrate farmers into a informal space in a more formal way, and then gradually build sustainability and scalability in those businesses so they can do still that secondary informal space, but also going into a more commercial space. If we then go into page 23 of our manuals, what you will find is effective marketing of any farm product starts with identifying the market objective. In other words, you need to sort of sell your product before you farm your product. Because especially when you look at fresh produce, etc., you need to understand that there's a market for it. So identifying your market is quite key. Now, when we look at densely populated, urbanized, city-type environments, and what has happened over the past 10 or 20 years, these environments, markets from an informal perspective are extremely available just around your corner, which is lucrative for somebody that starts with a small-scale farm to not have logistical costs, etc., especially in the beginning. Again, then that can be rather spent on marketing initiatives. Okay, you need to understand what is the product that comprehensive market, that market needs. Okay, and you need to understand what is the plan of getting that product in. And this is where marketing really comes in, as marketing your product. Because if you've got a product that you can't sell because nobody wants to buy it, you won't necessarily make money. And in a farming business, not being able to sell your product within the first week of the production is a big problem. Okay, so once objectives are identified, a marketing plan, okay, is created with product promotion as a key part. The plan should determine the main message, its intended effects and factors like content and presentation, suitable media channels, frequency of promotional material, in-store promotional strategies, methods to evaluate promotional effectiveness, and estimated campaign cost. So what do we actually say? We say when you have this, you need to look at what is the content and what is the media channels. Now, today's sort of media environment looks a lot different than 10 or 20 years ago, where you had radio and TV as your majority and outdoor type billboards, etc. type marketing. Today, the majority of marketing is done online, and a lot of those spaces have free advertising. So there's TikTok, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn, and various other methods. Today, there's WhatsApp groups, etc., that you can make use of. And then slowly build sort of a marketing budget and marketing capacity to start boosting posts so that more people can have an eye on your product. Okay? So you need to identify that suitable channels. Is it TikTok? Is it Instagram? Is it LinkedIn? It can be and that will really be determined also. Do you have a B2C market or a B2B? B2C being business, you, the firm, directly to the client, or you as a business to a business. And then there's a third one, you as a business to a business who then markets the product to a client, the C portion. Okay, in-store promotion. What's the type of promotions you can do on your farm for your product? Now, again, this is quite critical. So what I talk about is the day-to-day activities that you do is to upload videos, for example, on your chosen media channel, is so that people can see your products are healthy, it's produced in a healthy environment. And that is critical because people become part of that, your story, and that is what's crucial. Okay? And then you need a way to evaluate where are you most effective? Where is your client coming from? So, for example, in the beginning, you might market on various social media channels, but then find that only one or two work. So then you start focusing on those two, and this is where you start investing your budget into the ones that work. Okay, and you need to understand the cost thereof. The last thing you want to do, especially as a startup, is have this grand marketing plan that you can't afford. So really look into your budget. It is something you need to save for. It is something that you have to create within your total budget to ensure that you can, on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, keep the marketing up and going. Okay, so after planning a marketing budget is developed to outline required funds and how and when they'll be spent. The budget assesses affordability, benchmarks the plan's feasibility, and indicates whether it needs adjustment. It supports decisions on funding, promotion, advertising, and public relations. So this really talks to what I just said. When you look at the budget, you need to have this plan. You can have an insanely grand plan to compete with people that's got millions of rands in budget, but this is not your area. Understand your objective, understand your market, understand how to get your product to that market, and then look at the best, most affordable ways and means to do that. You don't necessarily want to spend every cent of profit into your marketing, especially when you do not know what is your ideal a market, because it might mean that you spend money on various social media channels to boost your advertisement, but yet only one or two work. So in the beginning, my advice would be, go towards everything, see what works, and then when you've saved and you've created this marketing budget in your business, then only start spending money on the ones that actually got clients, that converted eyes onto your advertisement into actual sales. Okay, so what's the components of a marketing budget? So there's the above-the-line techniques that you can market, and then below-the-line techniques. So above the line is your traditional advertising, paid media, like TV, newspapers, posters, and radio. This was the only real source of advertisement 20 years ago, and today social media and is controlling the advertising environment. And when you're a small budget business, growing business, I won't even consider like above the line type techniques, just purely because today social media gets more eyes on what you want to do. But again, tell a story about your product. Why would people buy an egg from you and not buy somebody else? Show them your day-to-day care of your animals, etc. Below the line techniques is the second one. Non-media tools like sales promotions, in-store discounts, sponsorships, exhibitions, which don't involve buying media space or airtime. Now, this is really where we look at social media, TikTok, Instagram, all those free paid ads, but also, it can be physical campaigns. So you might want to go to a farmer's market with your produce, where there's lots of people that specifically look at fresh farm produce, and you want to go there and you want to set up a stand. So that's also really something to think of. Market costs are often categorized as above the line or below the line. Both are essential components of any marketing budget. Absolutely. But as a startup, use social media, use everything that's free to you to get your product out there. Social media has really made it fairly easy for us. So let's turn to page 24 there, when we look at what does a marketing budget really include. Okay, so let's look at the two differences. You'll see there's a little graph there. So let's look at what is above the line and what is below the line. So above the line, as you can see, social networking, magazines and radio, advertising, TV and radio, cinema and posters, online, word of mouth. Okay, below the line, branding, direct mail, personal selling, exhibitions and trade fairs, merchandising, public relations, sales promotions, and packaging. So there's sort of the two splits for you. So even at above the line, there is a lot of free stuff that you can do, for example, in the social media space. And if you take care of your business, word of mouth will become your one of probably your best marketing strategy. And that does not necessarily need a budget as well. Very much like when you start up a social media. Below the line, branding is important, but also brand positioning is important. So branding is not a logo. Branding is not your about us. It's not your profile. But branding is everything about you. And brand positioning is everything about you. It's the story about you. So what do you intend to do, and what do you do on a daily basis? It's really everything. How did I grow? How did I get here? Tell my story. That the whole thing is really what your branding is about. It's from your logo, everything straight through is what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? It tells a story about you. Okay, direct mails in today's world doesn't really work anymore. And often, more than not, there's certain regulations in different countries that actually says you cannot do that. And personal selling, this is where you meet people at an exhibition, etc. Is where you meet, you shake hands, and you have a short video or a short communication with somebody. Exhibitions and trade fairs is really a cool thing to do. Let's think about more farmers market. And then there's obviously the other ones. In addition, costs related to marketing also include market research. Now, market research is always comes at a cost because there's specific companies that do it. But today, ChatGPT, various other forms of AI can assist companies with that as well. So really, when you're a startup, use what's free, what's at your fingertips to get to do your market research, to assist with market research. Yes, it might not be at the level of a specific company that focuses on that, but it's definitely free, and it starts you up to at least get to the initial clients so that you can build your budget. Okay. There's communication costs. So there's travel costs, etc. When you're going to start traveling to exhibitions, for example, or farmers markets, keep that in mind. A personal cost for staff time, short, medium, and long-term budget. So when you also look at your business, and when you start it, you've got sort of a short term, but never forget about the medium and the long term. Those are quite crucial because it gives you something to evaluate. And even those three phases, short, mid, and long term, you need to divide in achievable pillars over a certain amount of time. Otherwise, it's just really a pipe dream and not something you'll commit. So if you look at a short-term budget and you've got 3 or 4 or 5 pillars that needs to be reached at certain stages to at least get to your midterm. Otherwise, you find yourself in your long-term budget and ultimately you've not even achieved your mid or short-term budget. Okay, so the rest of there is a bit of a read through. You'll see at page 24 at the beginning, at the bottom, is monitoring your budget starts there. Because you have to monitor your budget. So in any budget, whether it's a business budget, whether it's an operational budget, a marketing budget, sales budget, doesn't really matter. Everything needs to be monitored. A simple way to do that is to create your budget, have a portion for marketing, for example, and then at the end of each month, where you had a budget of, for example, 1,000 Rand, put in your actuals, as you'll see, as I've spent 1,200 Rand, and make sure that you calculate all costs so you can keep track of that and to ensure that you don't find yourself 3, 4, 5 months in and all of a sudden you don't have a budget anymore. Okay. So you need to understand your market. Let's see at page 25 there. It's extremely important to understand your market. As an entrepreneur, as a farmer, as a business person, you need to understand what's your market. Okay. So who needs to buy your product? You'll see there. A consumer analysis is quite important. So who needs us and our farm product today? So in other words, yes, food, everybody needs food. So that's quite a benefit. And how do you use that benefit? How do you use that benefit in your business? It's what's really key. Okay. But who needs the business in your community, in your province, in your country, etc.? Who needs that product? And that's quite important. So again, it doesn't help you plant saffron in a rural community in Limpopo. Chickens, etc., is what people need. They won't necessarily buy something like saffron. While it's a high money turner for a business, it doesn't necessarily is something you sell to your community. As much as nuts won't be, if you grow cashew nut trees, etc., it's not something you'll directly sell to recoup your investment. But chickens and cabbage and spinach, for example, will sell, and potatoes will sell in a Limpopo market, for example. Okay, so who is buying your product and also who is using your product? So if you think about chickens, if you think about produce, is who are the people buying your market? Now, in South Africa, it's very much the same as Africa, which might be different too. So, well, it is different to Australia, for example. We sit with about 60% youth unemployment, 40% unemployment. And then also year on year, people are getting poorer, middle class and below. So if you're a small farmer, you need to understand the different LSM you sell to. Is it a high-end LSM, which typically would not buy a live chicken? They would go to a Woolworths or a large a store, and then you've got your sort of medium that sits at the Checkers, Pick and Pay type space, and then you've got sort of your just below medium, or sort of median income households, where you're now sitting with just below that, it's Boxer, sitting with the ShopRite, for example, etc. And then you go a little bit lower, now you're sitting at your street vendor space. So different spaces and LSMs that you need to understand would buy your product. So if you're a small-scale farmer, you're not going to necessarily supply Checkers or Woolworths, Boxer or ShopRite. Who you're going to supply, or large retail stores, who you're going to supply is your neighbors. And you want it that way because in that sense, you decrease your logistical cost, and then you can increase your marketing budget, for example, or your farm. Okay, but who's using your product? So understanding that is important. And beyond who's using your product, when do those people have money to buy your product? If you're in a farming environment, you're a seller of fresh produce, that fresh produce, it needs to go within a week. Otherwise, you will lose those products, whether it's your chickens, broiler, for example, your eggs, or it is, for example, spinach, tomato, etc. So you really need to understand your market. And when do those people have money to buy it? And then the last thing is, what is their buying process? Are they going to walk up to your farm, buy a chicken, buy eggs, buy buy vegetables, or do you need to take it to a centralized point? Those are things you need to consider, especially when you think about your marketing budget. But it doesn't have to be one without the other, obviously. You can be a person who goes to a farmer market, sells from your farm directly, and then also have a Saturday, your own little space to sell. But the majority of the small-scale farmers in South Africa's immediate market is massive, and to look at that as your starting point gives you the saving of logistics, etc. Okay. We need to understand that markets also constantly change. So if you think about South Africa over the past 10 years, our unemployment has increased, inflation has increased. So that has caused people to look for cheaper alternatives. So understanding how that market fluctuates makes huge difference. In South Africa also has only two main chicken producers, Astral Foods and Orshell Foods. So they determine the price. But in the other sense, South Africa gets dumped chicken from countries like Brazil, which is an unhealthy product. So now you need to understand your market and how that market changes and fluctuates the price in retail environments so that you can be competitive with a healthier product, farm to table type, healthier product to your customers. Okay, so the marketing budget indicates the impact that promotional activities will have on your monthly cash flow, and whether the promotional plan can be implemented as it is or whether it needs to be changed because it's too expensive. So that's what I just said. Do your actual expense. Take all of your expenses into account on your different marketing so that you can constantly evaluate them, look what works best for you, and not lose money with things that do not work for you. Okay, so you'll see there at the end of page 25 in your manual, you will then see the different techniques and the different costs you need to look at. Okay, so let's go into lesson 2, effective distribution of farm produce. Okay, so now there's different ways of distributing your product to the client. So now you have farmed successfully, but you have to now take what you have farmed and you have to sell it. And between your farm and whoever buys your product is the distribution channel. This is it can be something coming to you. You take your chicken out of your farm, you give it to them. Your distribution channel that came to you. Different distribution channel. Somebody might buy 100 chickens for a funeral, but you have to take them there or you have to slaughter them. So those are different distribution channels within that space. If you think about spinach, you're going to have different distribution channels when you sell it to your neighbor versus when you sell it to a boxer, ShopRite, or a retail supply chain. So those are different ways that you need to consider. Okay, so let's look at page 27, selecting your different distribution channels. The purpose: move farm products from pack house to markets or from your farm directly to fork. In most small spaces, and you look at farm to fork type transactions because it's less expensive. So that's what and factors influencing your choice is a market location and requirements, cost, practicality, the reputation of logistics providers. Common channels: wholesale distributors, sales reps, retailers. Okay, so if we look at the distribution channel, you need to understand, is your market right outside of your farm? That's a unique distribution channel. Then you also look at, let's say your farm is not where the immediate or the bigger market is. Then you need to start looking at taking your product to a market, which will include transport costs, logistics, cold chain logistics, also setup of your product where it needs to go and or sales. And then packaging and transport modes. You need to understand your product, your produce, to understand how you need to transport it. And this will obviously differ. So you can sell a live chicken, put them in live chicken crates, take them to a market, sell them in the live chicken crates. But if you want to sell your chickens to a ShopRite or a Boxer or a retail supply shop, store, what you then need to consider is, what do they want from you, from a health and safety perspective, from a healthy food perspective, etc. Then it will probably pass through an abattoir, and then because they don't sell live chickens. So different things that you need to consider when you market your product, when you package your product, and where are you as a business? What can you afford to use? And then obviously beyond that, how can you benefit through your marketing process from what you want to do here? Cooperative marketing and distribution. Now, let's take a simple example here. Excuse me. This is now where, let's say you've got somebody that farms 1 hectare of spinach here, somebody that farms there, etc., etc., etc. In a close enough vicinity. 1 hectare of spinach you might not necessarily be able to sell to a commercial buyer like a Checkers retail store, but 5 or 10 hectares, when you combine into a cooperative, you might be able to fulfill a larger quantity order, similar to chickens, similar to eggs, etc. So you might want to look at the cooperative model to secure a market larger than what you can supply at the moment, and then gradually and sustainably grow your business to be able to independently supply a contract such as that. Okay, and then monitoring and service level agreements there at the end of page 27, which is also quite crucial, because when you start looking at different supply markets that you want to supply, each one of those markets will have their own service level agreement, whether it's in a paper and certain criteria that you have to adhere to when you want to sell to a lot. Even when you sell a live chicken and egg from your farm and farm from fork, there's definitely criteria that you need to abide by, even if it's not a physical service level agreement, and purely because you want customers to come back, because it's a lot less expensive to keep current customers than to keep finding new customers of a bad product, etc. Word of mouth will completely dissolve your business if you do not continually have a quality product at an affordable price in your community. Okay, so let's jump to page 29 of your training manual, module 3. So in module 3, it's about communication skills. So communication skills enable individuals to understand others and to be understood themselves. A variety of aspects are important in the context of these skills, such as listening, speaking, observing, and empathy. Okay, so if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to be able to communicate effectively and get your messaging over. Okay? But more importantly is the ability to listen to what your customer needs. So, and I'm not talking about listening to respond. I'm talking about listening to really understand the needs of your customers so that you can provide through your business a solution for their needs, and not just a solution based on previous knowledge of somebody else. Okay, so if we go into lesson 1 on page 29, we look at effective communication skills. Okay, oral communication in the business world can include, but is not limited to, the following: staff meetings. So now you're a business, you grow into, now you're managing staff. The ability to communicate in a positive way and constantly with your staff is truly important. In today's world, when you look at your staff, you need to communicate with empathy. You need to communicate motivational, and you also need to communicate in the same manner consistently. You can't one day go to a staff meeting and you've got a sore tooth, and then the next day you're hyper in that same meeting. You need to find your level of communication where you are comfortable with, where you can communicate consistently. Okay, discussions of work to be completed. Again, when you're going to give a task to an employee, is how do you give that task? Now, in the beginning, you'll still find yourself in your business, but there's different ways of communicating with your staff. Is it in a motivational, empathetic way? Is it in a hard, my way or highway kind of communication, which typically you find in middle management? Or is it in a a different way. And you need to really find that, because that communicating in a consistent way is crucial for you as a business owner, especially when you grow your business. But similarly, when you communicate with customers, you need to be energetic. If you're not excited and passionate about your product and your produce, they will not be either. Okay, verbal instructions. So you need to be able to give verbal instructions, which sounds pretty simple because we all grow up, we give verbal instructions. But to give verbal instructions in a complementary, empathetic way, and ensuring that it actually happens in a motivational way is quite crucial. Okay. Verbal explanations of procedures, similar to the previous one. Communication of other relevant information, excuse me. So when you're a business owner, there's so many webs that you have to be able to communicate. Clients, legal, SARS, you need to communicate with your staff, you need to communicate with so many sort of different places. So the sooner you can find your way of communication, the sooner you do it, the better for you. Okay, verbal feedback or reports, verbal transfer of messages between staff. Written communication. You also really need to look at written communication. But also there's a lot of tools that can assist you. In the older days, written communication, PR statements, etc., LinkedIn posts, etc., needed a copywriter. In today's ChatGPT world, AI world, there's different ways of communicating written in a written format. Okay, letters of employment, contracts, organizational procedures, values of your organization, business plans, targets of growing your small business and growing to a bigger. So those are written communication. So really, what you will find in your verbal will really translate into the way you do your written communication as well, and really will become a big part of your identity. Okay, and then there's also legal communication that you need to understand. But again, you don't have to understand everything. You just need to be sure to use the tools that's available to you for free, like, for example, ChatGPT. Okay, you need the ability then to also analyze your audience. Okay, so analyzing your audience is crucial. Because you can't have necessarily one set of communication with everybody. You need to be able to build rapport with your immediate audience that you are communicating, whether written and or orally to ensure that rapport is there, that they understand the message as it comes from you. A typical way is today the whole world communicates on WhatsApp. And we might send a WhatsApp to somebody, and we would think that they would take that WhatsApp in a similar way that we meant it. However, when they receive the WhatsApp, they receive it in their current state, mind state that they are in. So really think about that. So analyze your audience, identify the audience, understand the audience, plan based on the audience type. So when you go to a meeting with ShopRite, when you go to a meeting with your community, and when we have a meeting with your wife or husband, and when you communicate with your kids, and when you communicate with your staff, it's all different ways. So you've got a framework that you communicate in, and then you adapt it to that audience. Okay, so types of audiences, there on page 30, a lay audience, limited knowledge of the subject. So a lot of times, even in Urban Farm Africa, or most times, when we go to communicate, when we go to communities and we start communicating and we talk about something like hydroponics, people have no idea what that even means. Okay, so we need to adjust our communication specifically on hydroponics. We don't go really into the scientific part of that. We first build a basis of understanding, and then over time, we really go into the scientific side of it. Okay, then when you've got a lay audience with limited knowledge, you really need to avoid jargon and talking down to them. So you don't go to when you communicate with your staff, don't talk down to them, don't talk down to anybody. Stay humble in your communication at all times to ensure you build rapport. Okay, explain technical terms. So this is now when we say hydroponic farming, when I'm in a community, they have no idea what it is, because they've never had access. What we then do is we break it down into the similarities between soil-based agriculture and hydroponic farming, and then we do the similarities, then we do the differences, and then people can understand that. Okay, expert audience. So when you have an expert audience, you also need to have deep knowledge of the subject. So you need to. So if you go into an expert audience, you want those experts to learn from you. So you really need to be an expert in your field. Okay, then you avoid basic information like what is hydroponics. You explain for example, what hydroponics have added into agriculture in urban and rural environments, the types of hydroponics you get, and the types of vegetables that is grown in hydroponics, for example. And then you also need, in both cases, whether it's a lay audience or an expert audience, more so maybe, you need to be prepared to ask questions. So if you're not an expert with the confidence in your environment, you won't be able to confidently answer those questions, and that would not go over well with an expert audience. A technical audience are practical doers, not theorists. Use clear, simple language and practical examples. So farming generally is a more practical type business. So we do practical explanation. So when I explain to somebody doing a health check on a chicken, on a broiler chicken or a layer, I don't just go through the checklist. I have a physical chicken there to go through that checklist and to ensure that they understand that checklist. Okay, in a mixed audience, when it's a mixed audience, you will find that over the course of your conversations, you will typically find the experts, the technical people, the lay audience, and you will communicate a message and look at them directly when you talk in a specific format. Okay, then information to gather about your audience. So you need to understand the majority of what you can before you communicate with an audience. So you need to understand the context, the purpose, the size, the cultural background, as well as the occupational and seniority. So you need to understand these basic things before you communicate your message to ensure that your message reach the intention that you had with the message. Factors to consider in communication planning. Your format, verbal, written, individual or in a group, your audience perception, your location, and your desired outcomes. Okay, if we move there to page 31 of your training manual, okay, common communication purposes. Okay, describing or explaining, recording results, accepting or rejecting proposals, evaluating alternatives, apologizing or informing. So that's the reason why you communicate. So it's quite important to also understand which one of those do you intend to your message to be. And that's quite important. So tips for effective communication: vocabulary choices, avoid technical terms, define when necessary, use familiar short words. Okay, be specific. Okay, so when you talk to somebody, don't have a whole politician type talking everything around a point. When you talk to somebody to sell your product, give the benefits of the product, tell your story of the product, understand your audience, build rapport, and you'll sell your product. Okay, your tone and style is also quite important because you also need to adapt your tone and style to a degree to who you are selling your product or produce to, but you need to keep your own individual characteristics as well. Okay, and then clarity. Clarity is extremely important throughout the process so that your clients don't get confused with what you are saying to them. Okay, so let's go to page 32, which I'm going to touch on, which we've covered already. Okay, so your tone. Let's look at your tone there at the top. 32 reflects the sender's attitude towards the receiver and the content. So in other words, when you sell a product, you want to be excited about it, because in my experience, if you're not excited about your product, How would your clients or customers be excited about your product? In verbal messages conveyed through voice, body language, and words. So we've not even covered body language, which forms about 70% of your communication is really body language. Are you slouching your shoulders? Are you rolling your eyes? Those are key things. Are you looking somebody in the eye when you communicate with them? Those things are non-verbal, non-written communication. That's even more important, especially when you want to present your product and show the excitement that you do have to sell your product. Okay, so here are some guidelines for tone. Use a friendly or neutral tone. Avoid stiffness or hostility. Okay, adopt a pleasant and persuasive tone for business communication. Avoid aggressive or demanding language. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. I don't think I need to explain more about that. Okay, example, unfriendly. The receipt of your letter is acknowledged. Queries are being checked. So that's unfriendly, which you find as an example friendly. Thank you for your query. I am gathering the information and will contact you soon. So the same message, but in a different format. And then your receiver of the message will also receive your message in a different way. Okay, style refers to how words are organized to suit purposes and audience. Okay, so what is your communication style? Okay, key aspects of style. Formality is formal. Okay, so now when you communicate in a formal tone, you need to look at how do you use your reports, your formal vocabulary. So this is a more formal. Okay, your high formal, then you've got your formal, consultative, casual, and intimate. So those are different ways of your formality that you need to take into account to whom you communicate to. And those differ, as you will know, when you talk to your kids, your wife, your husband, your client, your buyer, your supplier, etc. Those tend to fall under one of those 5 examples. Personal versus impersonal. Personal uses I, impersonal uses it as a writer. So this is also, so there is different cases where it's a personal message. So I thank you for being my client, or you will use something like Urban Farm Africa thanks clients. It's personal and a little bit more impersonal as well. Active versus passive. Active, direct and engaging, and passive, neutral and indirect. So when you engage with your audience, you need to understand what works within your character style, but also you need to understand that you need to be more active is when you have when you directly engage and engaging with a client. In other words, you greet them, you look them in the eye, and you thank them for being there, considering your product, and then you explain the benefits of your product. When you're a passive, it's more neutral and indirect. So a client comes there, you have a little bit of a communication, how's your kids doing, etc., and then you move over to the sale of your product. Okay, concise versus wordy. Avoid unnecessary words when you are focus on clarity and brevity, and then short sentences improve understanding at the same time. Clear and ambiguous. Plan your message carefully to ensure clarity. Avoid vague expressions, reread and simplify language. Okay, concrete versus vague. Use specific facts, okay, and figures. Avoid generalizations. Tips for clarity and simplicity. There at the bottom of page 32. Okay, use common, simple words. Avoid long sentences, paragraphs, or overly technical jargon. Use specialized terms only when the audience will understand them. Reread your messages if the receiver might be clear. So that's at the end of page 32, which also ends lesson 1. Now, when we look at lesson 2 there on page 34 of your manual, okay, so the importance of communication in your supply chain. So if you're a farmer, for example, you will have to buy inputs. Those inputs come from your suppliers. So you need to have the ability to communicate with your suppliers, but to also negotiate better deals with your suppliers. for example, when you want to buy more quantity. So communication, even at that stage already, is extremely important. It's not only at the end stage where it's important. Yes, it's on both stages, but you need to understand that from the beginning, straight through, with your staff, with your business, with your input, with your sales, communication is one of the most crucial things you need to understand how to do. Watch courses on YouTube, watch courses on LinkedIn learning about communication, because communication is really, it's you, it's your product, and you need to communicate around that. Okay, so importance of communication in supply chain goes beyond shipping and logistics, includes vendors. Building strong vendor relationships increase productivity. Vendors supply goods or services. Strong supplier-customer relationships benefits both parties and are essential for growth. Key factors in supplier-customer relationships. Okay? Satisfaction. Ensure quality, timelines, ease of access, and commitment to conditions. Okay? Competitiveness. Evaluate your suppliers based on pricing, quality, reliability, and industry trends. Okay? Innovation. Collaborate with suppliers to suggest and implement product improvements. Finance. Suppliers may offer financial flexibility like loans or extended terms. Customers should honor commitments to maintain goodwill. Okay. Tips for customers to strengthen supplier relationships. Timely payments. So when somebody supplies you, timely payments. Okay. Flexibility. You also need to be flexible as much as your supplier needs to be flexible and more an understanding. Okay. You need personalized interaction with your suppliers. You need to build a personal relationship with your suppliers, because at one stage you're going to have to start negotiating a better deal, especially when you grow your business, and you want to ensure that you have that personal relationship to do so. Okay? Share information. Share information. So if you see that your business, your client base are increasing, there's more demand for your product, start communicating that message to your suppliers also, so that they can prepare in advance and or give you certain favorable terms so that you can sell your product and then only pay them, which happens more often than not. Be valued yet demanding. Create good impressions and building trust. First impressions, eye contact, warm smiles, friendly greetings, and attentiveness matter. So whether it's with suppliers or clients or your staff, doesn't really matter. We need to have eye contact. We need to smile when we communicate. We need to be friendly, and we need to be honest. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Personal presentation. Dress professionally and maintain good grooming. You will never be successful if you do not dress professionally, as professional as you can, for the profession that you are doing, of course, and you've got good grooming habits. Okay, positive attitude. Approach customers confidently and helpfully, even in challenging situations. So you need to be able to have a positive attitude, whether the business is up or down, to ensure that you keep that constant positive energy. And ensure that that energy translates to your suppliers and your buyers of your product. Okay, verbal communication skills, questioning skills. Okay, here are different types of questioning skills. Okay, a closed question, it gathers basic fact. So, for example, are you farming chickens? Yes, closed question. Okay, open question, understand the needs. Okay, so, I see you are here to buy 2 dozen eggs. Is that your monthly supply, or is that for your household, or is this a monthly supply for somebody else? It's where you want people to start interacting with you so that you can understand if there's the opportunity to sell more eggs to them. Okay, probing question, gain details. Okay, this is now, for example, when you now go beyond. So now we've established the egg scenario that they are actually buying for a school but yes, now it goes one further, because now you want to ensure that you probe a little bit more, because you might be able to supply more. Is this sufficient for the school, or do the school require more eggs? Okay, what is the amount of eggs that the school requires? Is it 2 dozen or is it 20 dozen? Can I be a supplier for that? What is your current price that you are paying? What is the current quality of those checks? What is the viability of those eggs? Is there a possibility that I can supply? And those are sort of your probing questions to understand if there's a bigger market with your current buyer. Confirming question to clarify understanding. So once you also need to ask the question, is this correct? Is my understanding correct at the end? So that you don't come back with your way of thinking. The client or the customer is there with their way of thinking, and it's completely different scenarios. Okay? And then a summary confirmation, similarly to confirming questions. Conversational skill. Build rapport by supporting warmth, interest, and honest. If you're an honest business person, an honest farmer, build rapport with your customers. People love to do business with honest people. Avoid bias and adapt the customer's communication styles. Verbal skills. Adjust pitch, volume, and tone for clarity and impact. Then you need to communicate very clearly when you communicate. Non-verbal communication skills. Listening skills. Listen. Then, when you're done listening, listen. It's so important for you to listen to your customer, to listen to your supplier. It's probably the most important thing because it's the only way you will understand how the market is changing, how you can adapt and benefit from the market changes. Okay. And then interpreting skills. Observe customers' behavior to gauge interest or reluctance. That is the page 35 in your training manual. Let's go to page 36 of your training manual, which is also your last page in your training manual for the Farmer's Edge training manual, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, and building and growing business success. Okay, understanding non-verbal cues. So this is important because you need to understand it because you are doing a lot of non-verbal cues, but you also need to understand that from your supplier on the one end and then from your buyer on the other end. Interpreting your customers' non-verbal signs and behaviors allow you to read their attitude and better understand their needs. Projecting the right non-verbal cues yourself can help your customer feel at ease. Okay, here are some positive and negative examples of non-verbal cues. Facial expressions, bad, wrinkling the nose, furrowing the brow, or rolling the eyes. So we spoke a bit about the non-verbal, the attitude that you've got. That's extremely bad to roll your eyes, etc. A customer says, you look, my chicken, I thought it's going to weigh 3 kilograms, now it's only weighing 2.5. Now you roll your eyes at the customer. It is really bad. Good smiling, raised eyebrows, and relaxed mouth. Okay, eye contact. It's bad. It's the bad example, avoiding your customer or looking outside your sales space. This is extremely bad when you start looking around when you communicate with an audience or your customer. This is the first showing of dishonesty, and people does not like to buy from somebody that's dishonest. Okay, what is good? Looking back at your customer's face and at your product. Okay, so important to be engaging, not always looking at the eye, but engaging with your chickens in your space, your communication space, your fresh produce, etc. Showing an egg, smiling, and communicating. Okay. Hands bad. Hands folded to the chest. We know this is a very bad example, but a good example is when you start communicating, especially when there's language barriers. And you start communicating and you start showing a little bit with your hands and showing the chicken and the produce, etc. It's engaging, it's fun for your customer, and it's honest for your customer. Okay, gestures, position, bad, moving too close. So you don't want to necessarily be on top of your customer. You want to create a safe space where you can also interact with your produce and with your customer easily. Okay, and then good, very good is observing personal space, accommodating cultural differences. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us in this two-part series of videos for the Farmer's Edge. You do need the Farmer's Edge, the entrepreneurship, sales, and marketing journey. It's one thing to start a business. It's one thing to have a small business, but to scale that business in a sustainable and a profitable way, you definitely going to need to be an entrepreneur. You need to understand marketing. You need to understand your product, your audience. You need to understand how to communicate to your audience. You need to understand the 4 P's of marketing, what above the line marketing is, what below the line media marketing is. You also need to understand what's free out there that you can use, like social media, for advertising your product. Also, how to use social media to your benefit, how to evaluate your marketing plan. You also need to understand that you need to create a budget for these things. You need to understand what works. You need to evaluate your marketing tactics at all times. Nobody is right all the time. It's a journey that you start to build sustainably, profitably, and scale your business. Thanks for joining me in this video. I'll see you in the next video.